Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you.
Ooh.
Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life gets easier with great assists, and State Farm is here to dish one your way. Get in touch over the phone or on the app to get the teammate you need. State Farm with the assist. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
Want to live better?
We got a lot of work to do.
Join Chris Hemsworth in National Geographic's new Disney Plus original series, Limitless. Live better now.
I'm diving headfirst into cutting-edge science to uncover 3 powerful secrets to living better right now. The growth that occurs through any challenging experience is really what we seek.
Chris Hemsworth stars in Limitless. Live better now. Streaming August 15th on Disney Plus and Hulu.
It's showtime.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 199 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I won't have a dog terrorizing me on this episode, so that's nice. But yeah. Talking football, always excited to talk football, especially as it's inching closer.
Yeah, we've got, what, is the entire Week 1 preseason in the books after today? I think it is.
Yeah,
I think the
games today, yeah.
Preseason schedule always is like, it's weird. Teams are playing on like every day. Most of the games aren't shown live. They're shown on like a Tuesday at 4 a.m. on the NFL Network. It's great stuff. But yeah, we are going to break down today the AFC and the NFC South. This is the third of 4 episodes breaking down each division. So if you've missed any of those, we did the AFC and NFC East in episode 197. Then last week we did the AFC NFC North. Next week we'll finish that up with the AFC and NFC West, which has had some landscape kind of altering, well, a landscape altering injury that I'm sure we might get to in final thoughts. We'll for sure get into next week. But today we're here on the South, and let's kick things off, Mark, in the NFC South. So we'll do AFC second. We're going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who went 10-7 last season. They lost to the Commanders 20-23 in the wild card round, and that game kind of had a wild ending. They had the ball and the lead in the fourth quarter before a fumble gave Washington their first lead of the game. They came back to tie it up with a field goal, and then Washington kicks the field goal as time expires to win. So it was a close call. The Bucs almost went on and knocked off the Commanders, who knocked off the Lions the next week. So, in an alternate universe, it could have been a really interesting change up if that game goes to overtime or if that Baker fumble doesn't happen. But and I don't really feel like they lose a ton this offseason. They lost Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Robert Hainsley, Jordan Whitehead, but I just don't see a lot of big names as losses for them. Likewise, they didn't have a lot of big name additions outside of the draft. I mean, they got Hassan Reddick, but who knows how that's going to pan out at this point. But in the draft, they draft Emeka Egbuka in the first round, which I don't think we were crazy about, given what they have at wide receiver, but there's no doubt he's a really good weapon. And so I think you can expect good things from their offense. And then they went cornerback in the second round with Benjamin Morrison, Mark's guy out of Notre Dame. So they will face the number 25 set of defenses. And remember, 1 is the hardest. They've got an easy schedule for their offense to face. They face the 18th most difficult offensive schedule. And overall, the number 23 strength of schedule. So fairly easy schedule. Their over-under win total is at 9.5. I think one of the big things to watch for them is they're doing the third offensive play caller in 3 years thing right now. They lose Dave Canales after 2023. They lose Liam Cohen after 2024. And now they have Josh Grizzard for this season. And so how is that going to work out? Baker is coming off of a stellar year. And he has a new passing target in Egbuka. So is the offense going to gel? Can Mayfield do that again with a third consecutive different play caller? And one of the things their offense did a lot last year was utilizing the screen game. They ran a lot of screens, and they ran them very effectively. And that's going to be a key thing to watch to see if they can continue that. And then on the flip side, they spent 2 day 2 picks on rookie cornerbacks for a secondary that really struggled last year. And so can one or both of those guys step up and really make an impact on the second level of the Bucs defense? So, like I said, their over-under win total is at 9.5. Mark, how do you feel about the Bucs?
I'm going over, and I think this is one of those rosters that when we did our expansion draft and you protect you protect 5 players on each side and then a wild card, or 4 players on each side and a wild card. I forget the amount we did,
something like that. I think it was 5.
Whatever we did, it shows kind of which teams have pretty good depth on their roster of blue chip guys, or at least really good starters. And Tampa was one of those teams that I remember walking away feeling like, oh, this team is every bit as good as any team in the NFC outside of Philly. And I feel that way now. And you look at the roster, I think Baker's a top 10-ish quarterback. They have Bucky Irving, who broke out as a star last year. You still have a solid backup to that in Rachaad White. They have the deepest wide receiver room in football, pretty unquestionably, I think, if Chris Godwin is at all to be counted on at any point this year. I think he probably starts the year maybe on the PUP, or if not on the PUP, maybe at least missing the first couple games. But even outside of that, you have Mike Evans. You have a guy in Jalen McMillan who I really thought shined last year when Godwin went out. And then, like you mentioned, you have Egbuka. You have K. Dotton at tight end. You have multiple O-linemen you feel really good about. Wirfs, Skidecki, Malk. And then you have Graham Barton from last year, who you're hoping he takes a step in his second year. And then on the defense, like the front 7, you have kind of the old guard that's kind of been there for a while with Tampa, with Levante and Vita Vea. And then you kind of have this new crop of guys they've drafted over the last 5 years, I'll say, with Yaya Diaby and Chris Braswell and Logan Hall and Kalijah Kancey and a bunch of names. And we'll see if how many of them pop or how many of them keep developing. And then you add Hassan Reddick as well. I think there's enough names in the front 7 that you feel pretty good about. You have Antoine Winfield at safety. You have 3 corners who graded out in the top 46 of the NFL last year, who all played 700 plus snaps. And then you just drafted Benjamin Morrison. All of that to say, I think you could make a strong case this is the second best roster on paper in the NFC. My question, Shane, and I don't think anybody can tell me with a straight face that the answer to this is yes, or that they feel good about it. Do you think Todd Bowles is a Super Bowl winning head coach? Do you think he's the type of guy who you could feel comfortable picking a team to win the NFC or to win the Super Bowl with, no matter how deep or how good the roster is?
With a different quarterback, maybe. But
really? Okay.
I just, so Baker's one of those guys, and I think Baker is a good quarterback, but I think you are going to need somebody scheming the offense up pretty well to pull it all together in a way that, you go get a Lamar, a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes. You don't necessarily have to have that. And so the fact that I think Todd Bowles, he's going to always have some game management things that I don't like. I think he's always going to have a defense that I do like. But I think that I would, if Baker's going to be my quarterback, I would much rather have the guy that's going to stick around for a long time, because that's my biggest concern. Like, if Liam Cohen was still here this year, do I think the Bucs could contend for the NFC and potentially make a Super Bowl appearance? I think it's possible, but there's so much unknown with the new guy that's coming in, and I think that's the sticking point for me. So I'm over 9.5, but I hesitate to say, this team is going to make an NFC Championship game appearance, because I just have some unknowns on that offensive side where the talent's very good, but I don't know what we're going to get play calling wise.
Yeah, and that's a great inclusion. I should have mentioned that, and Liam Cohen did a great job before that. Dave Canales did a great job. So maybe the hope is that they've kind of found the secret sauce in finding these OCs and finding these play callers in this era, dating back to Arians, and Leftwich had a year where he called plays and won the Super Bowl there with Tampa. So they've done a good job as an organization and as a front office kind of doing that. But you're probably right that the only way Bowles is going to win a Super Bowl as a head coach is if he has an elite quarterback or if he has an elite play caller. And I think that's kind of the issue with hiring a defensive coordinator, as we always talk about in these head coaching conversations. And same thing with a CEO type coach like a Dan Campbell. And if you want to throw Sirianni in that, you can. But I do think it's especially pronounced when at least Sirianni has an offensive background, and we know that he's pretty involved in the game planning and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different than Bowles. I would love to pick Tampa as the team that could compete with Philly in the NFC, and because the Rams, you have kind of the Stafford concerns with the arm or whatever's going on with him, and the
herniated disc or something like that.
Yeah, it's all related. The back, the shoulder, the arm, whatever he's got going on is kind of all connected, I think, at this point. And then you have the Commanders, who I think there's such obvious regression stuff to point to. I'm actually starting to kind of buck against that. I feel like maybe the hate's gone too far on the Commanders, and almost like nobody's projecting them to make the playoffs now, and I think they probably are a wild card team. But are they a contender? Probably not. And then, who are we talking? It depends how you feel about the NFC North, and Detroit lost their coordinators. Nobody's as high on Green Bay as I am. Minnesota changed quarterbacks, and you have to imagine that elite defense is not going to be elite. Chicago's not ready. Like, there starts to be you kind of have to tab your team that you're picking to compete with Philly, at least to make the NFC Championship. I've clearly chosen Green Bay. But if you told me, if Green Bay and Tampa swapped head coaches and Matt LaFleur was the Tampa head coach, I'd be picking them to go to the Super Bowl, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't really have anything to add to that, I guess. I was going to try to come up with a bit of a rebuttal there with Bowles, but I think is what it is. And I don't dislike Todd Bowles. I just don't think the roster as constructed with Todd Bowles is a legit contender. I think they can win some games in the playoffs, but I'd have a hard time picking them against the Eagles, against, if healthy, the Stafford-led Rams. Mm-hmm. I think there's just a lot of things there that work against them. So I think they're going to be a fun team. I'm definitely taking the over. I think they're going to win this division. I think they could win. I think they could go over this win total by a couple of games, to be honest. This isn't one that's particularly close for me. It wouldn't surprise me for the Bucs to be 12-5, 13-4 when they get down the stretch, because I do think it's a good team, and I do think they have a pretty soft schedule.
I have them winning 11 games, but it's pretty easy to see a 13-14 win Tampa season where we all think we're going to get to it. We all think New Orleans is going to be bad, and it comes down to what you think of Atlanta and Carolina. Nobody thinks either of those teams are going to win like double-digit games, I don't think. So no matter what, you don't have a brutal divisions path there, and otherwise they have some pretty easy stretches there otherwise. So there is a path for Tampa to go and take that 1 seed because of the division in some ways.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to the rest of that division. Let's go to the Falcons next. They were 8-9 last season. They lose Grady Jarrett, Drew Dahlman, Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons, and Rondale Moore. They bring in Leonard Floyd, Divine Diablo, Jalen Walker, James Pierce, and Xavier Watts through the draft. They will face the 30th most difficult set of defenses this year, the 7th most difficult set of offenses, and overall have the 29th most difficult strength of schedule. Their over-under win total is 7.5. And this all comes down to Michael Penix Jr., right? How's he going to look in year 2 after playing only a handful of games as a rookie last year? He only had 120 dropbacks last season. And he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL when kept clean, which it's a really small sample size. But if you believe in that, you can keep him clean. Your offense could have a lot of success. You have Bijan Robinson. You have Drake London. You have whatever Kyle Pitts is at this point in his career. You've got some weapons to work with. But I have a lot of questions on... So you've got the question at quarterback, but I have a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball. The Falcons have ranked second to last or last in sacks in 3 out of the last 4 years. And they finally tried to address it this year. They double dip on pass rushers with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., both undersized guys. And we didn't like that when we did our draft recap stuff. But the question is, will it work? I mean, the defense was awful last year, and it all starts up front. And so their over-under win total is 7.5. I think I'd take the over on that because I believe that Penix will be good enough. And again, easy division, easy schedule. They face easy defenses. My bigger concerns are on the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons.
They weren't good last year and won 8 games. And Kirk Cousins was terrible for like half of that season. And you look at the schedule, they're playing a much easier schedule this year than they played last year when they played the AFC West and they played the Eagles. And they had a tough schedule last year, especially if you go look at how they started last season. It was a brutal start of last year's schedule when Kirk was still upright at that point, before he had worn down. But I think that there's a lot to whether or not we liked them trading their future for James Pierce. It's a positive on this year's team that they went up and added a second first-round pick. Was it a smart decision? No. If they liked James Pierce that much, they should have just taken him where they took Jalen Walker. But in terms of this year's team, where now they traded their first-round pick, there's no incentive for them to be bad. Even towards the end of the year, if you're losing games, there's no incentive to be bad at all. I think that this Falcons team is going to be at least as good as they were last year, and I think that there's reason to think that the defense could make a lot of improvement. You have James Pierce and Jalen Walker both give you bites at the apple of what if one of those guys proves to be the best defensive player from this year's class, if either of those guys turned out to be a stud and maybe one of the best players from this year's class, maybe the best, whatever you want to say, nobody's going to be shocked. There were plenty of people who loved both of them in different camps, but and then you also have a guy in Braylon Trice who they took in 2024 who missed the entire year, who hopefully he comes back and makes an impact. You have you drafted Xavier Watts, as we talked about. Maybe he can step in to the other safety role next to Jesse Bates. So I do think that there is reason to hope for improvement on defense, especially with Raheem Morris. But the other question is kind of similar to Tampa. I have Atlanta going 9-8, barely missing the playoffs, and I think if I felt better about the head coach, I think I could probably talk myself more into them being maybe the surprise team this year, or one of the surprise teams where they do get to 10-11 wins. But with the way that I didn't love Zach Robinson last year, maybe those issues were more on Kirk Cousins than the play calling, and I didn't love anything about the coaching staff from last season with Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson. I don't know if they're the staff that's going to level this team up, But you're probably right that it comes down to Penix more than anything. I actually think it comes. I believe in Penix to be passable, so I actually think it comes down to the staff.
Yeah. Dibes chiming in says, hot take, Penix will have a better statistical year than Jaden Daniels.
That would be something. I would love it. I have been taking Penix kind of late in fantasy. I have him QB 18. He's probably going around QB 25.
And then it says, rank these quarterbacks after this season. Penix, Bryce Young, Cam Ward, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is 4 by a wide margin.
That's a really, really good question. Penix, Bryce, and Cam.
Cam's probably 3 because he's just in a bad situation, I think.
Yeah, this is really tough. I would say Penix 1, Cam. It's either Penix, Bryce, Cam, or Penix, Cam, Bryce. I can't decide there. I feel pretty good about Penix.
I think I would lean Young 1, Penix 2, but it's close for me.
I think there's part of me, and he looked really good in the preseason the other day, but there is part of me that thinks if you go look at the last couple, the stretch of Bryce Young that everybody's remembering being amazing, it wasn't as knock your socks off incredible statistically. I think part of it was that he set such a low bar. We're going to talk about that in a second, so I don't want to say too much. But I'm not debating too much with it. I do think there's part of me that thinks the Bryce Young optimism is a little much this year, and that's coming from a guy who had him above C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the Panthers. While we're there, they're 5-12 last season. They lose Jadeveon Clowney, Xavier Woods, Shaq Thompson. They bring in Trevon Moehrig, Tershawn Wharton, Patrick Jones, Tet McMillan, Nick Scorton, and Princely Uman-Mielen. They will face the number 31 set of defenses, the number 1 set of offenses. So wild discrepancy there. Overall, they have the 26th most difficult strength of schedule. So their over-under win total is at 6.5. And for them, their defense was awful last year. And then they retained their entire defensive staff. And then they spent their first-round pick on an offensive player. Now, they needed to. The offense was also awful through the air. It's just not a great roster.
Yeah.
But they go get Tet McMillan, which I don't take issue with. I just question what this defense is going to do better. Now, they do take 2 bites at the apple, and Nick Scorton and Princely Uman-Mielen, 2 guys that, people liked, and, if one of those guys turns out to be good, it helps you out a lot. But, and it comes down to that stretch of Bryce Young last year. He did play a lot better down the stretch, and it was a low anchor point, but it was a big improvement. So it still wasn't good enough, but it was a step in the right direction. And so this season is about hope for the future. And for Bryce Young, frankly, it's a make-or-break year. If this team is sitting with a top 3-4 pick in the draft, they're probably replacing Bryce Young after this season. When they go out and they get Tet McMillan, who you expect to be pretty good, Bryce has to show something. He has to play this team out of the range of drafting a quarterback, in my opinion. The question is, will he do it? So what are your thoughts on the Panthers, and 6.5 is a win total?
If we're taking J.C. Horn off the table, and I think he might have. Did he get banged up recently? I think I might have saw.
Probably.
Yeah.
Has he ever not been banged up?
Yeah, I think he got hurt again. I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
If we're assigning injury or ratings Madden style for J.C. Horn, his injury rating is like a 9.
And he actually didn't even grade out that well. Obviously, PFF, grades grain of salt, but. He graded out as an average corner last year. If you're taking J.C. Horn off the table, who's the best player on the Panthers' defense?
I'd have to pull a depth chart up.
I'm looking at it right now. Like Trevon, I'm trying to even remember who we protected when we went through this. Like Trevon Moehrig is fine.
Derek Brown.
He missed all of last year.
Yeah, he's always injured too.
Yeah, he missed the entire season last year.
But that's it. I mean, it's Horn and Brown.
Who's their best edge rusher that was on the team before they drafted Princely and Scorton? I don't need. It's bad. It's not a good defensive roster whatsoever. I have them at 8 and 9, and as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of like talking myself lower. Like maybe I need to take away a couple wins from them and find other places to give it to throughout their schedule, because this defense is not going to be good enough. And like I said, I think the Bryce Young optimism has probably went a little bit too far. Now, the thing that could change that conversation is, I think one of the takeaways I've had from, I think, like, for me, training camp's all about fantasy football, Shane, as you know. It's all about what do you take with a grain of salt and what do you actually have takeaways from. Because I was trying to explain this in a group chat to people who I think they're a little bit more NFL brained than fantasy football brained. And every head coach in the offseason wants, or I'll ask you, Shane, as an offensive, let's say, head coach that calls offensive plays, or an offensive play caller, whoever's answering the question, what does an offensive play caller come into the season wanting to do more every year?
Run the ball
more every single year. And a lot of times people use that as, they want to run the ball more. We're going to
be physical. We're going to wear the other team down. We're going to crush teams in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you're planning to be up in games? Like, yeah, I bet. I bet you are. So it's one of those things that you have to realize what to take real and what to not. Another one of those, while we're on this tangent, is I don't know if you'll be able to guess this one, so I'll just come out and say it. It goes in line with that, but we want to keep that RB1 fresh. We're going to be giving a lot of carries to this year. A big one is Arizona. The Drew Petzing's been saying, Trey Benson going to be getting almost as many carries as James Conner. When they've both been healthy, Trey Benson's barely gotten like 3 carries a game. So I'll believe it when I see it with your job on the line, Drew Petzing, that you're going to be spelling James Conner like since you haven't been in your entire career. Anyway, put that aside. Tet McMillan, out of all the takeaways that I've heard people have at camp, or big, guys who have shown, guys who have shined, guys who have struggled, my biggest takeaway, and maybe it's just because the videos are so impressive and because I loved him coming into the year, is that, man, Tet McMillan has a chance to be really good right away and change Bryce Young's fortune, change Carolina as an offense. Dave Canales, really smart guy, really good coach. I think he's going to put him in positions to succeed. He's making his own team look silly. I forget who they scrimmaged against. He made them look silly. I think he had a pretty good preseason game, although I think he did drop a touchdown. But he's apparently been unbelievable, and I've leveled him up 7 or 8 spots on my fantasy rankings. So the big X factor in this, outside of can the defense be not bottom 5, is how good can Tet McMillan make this offense.
Yeah, I think I'm taking the under. I think they're going to go under 6.5 wins, but I also think they're going to feel more confident about Bryce Young leaving this year than they do now. So I think the offense, I think Bryce and McMillan, I think they have a good year. I just think the defense is too bad to be able to do a lot competitively this year.
I'm going over. I have them at 8 and 9. I think that's going to end up being 7 and 10. Wouldn't bet this one, but I'll go over.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go on to the final team in this division, the New Orleans Saints. They went 5-12 last year. New head coach this year in Kellen Moore, who Eagles fans are very well acquainted with. They lose Paulson Adebo in free agency. They lose Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Will Harris. They bring in Justin Reed, Brandon Cooks, Kelvin Banks, Tyler Shuck through the draft. They will face the number 32 set of defenses, number 20 most difficult set of offenses, overall the 30th most difficult strength of schedule. Their over-under win total is at 6.5. And it's an easy schedule, but to me, 6.5 wins is a crazy high win total for a team with a first-time head coach and a rookie quarterback who played 7 seasons of college football across 3 different schools and still had under 1,000 career passing attempts. And it's not like he's stepping into a good situation where you can minimize that. Their trenches are bad on both sides of the ball. On offense, they were near the bottom in pressure rate allowed last year. On defense, they had the second worst yards per carry allowed last year. This is despite spending 8 of their last 9 first-round picks on offensive linemen or defensive linemen. 5 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, and then Chris Olave. And so, to me, this is an easy under. I just don't see this team. I think this team's a real contender for 1 overall.
They're going to be the worst team in football. So I actually have the over-under at 4.5, but it's minus 160. So there's not even really like a bettable line out there. Like, it should probably be 5.5. I'm sure when you saw 6.5, it was probably like plus 150. They haven't landed on a line for New Orleans. It seems like no one's going to bet a minus 160 win total. So I'll go under on literally whatever the number is. Like, they're going to win 1 or 2 games. I really do think it's them or Cleveland. And you compare this roster side by side to Cleveland, I think there's a lot more you could grasp onto in Cleveland. And I think there's almost a 100% chance that Cleveland over this full season gets much better quarterback play than New Orleans.
Yeah, agreed.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Got some good news for your ears. More of that good stuff is coming up. And even better news for your hair. The best hair care is at Sephora. They've got all kinds of products for every kind of hair. From brands like Amika, Kerastase, Day, and K18. You knew where to get great audio. Now, you know where to get great hair care, too. Sephora. Good news for great hair. Shop hair care now at Sephora.com.
So, all right, let's flip over to the AFC South now, and let's talk about the Houston Texans, who went 10-7 last season. They beat the Chargers 32-12 in the playoffs, which is basically a bye if you're facing the Chargers in the playoffs, before losing to the Chiefs 23-14 in the divisional round. They lose Laramie Tunsil this offseason. We're going to talk about that. They also lose Stephon Diggs and Eric Murray. They added Christian Kirk, Cam Robinson, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who apparently avoided an ACL injury. I saw conflicting reports, but the last thing I saw was it wasn't an ACL tear. They also get Sheldon Rankins. They draft Jaden Higgins and Ariante Ursary. They will face the number 18 most difficult set of defenses, 14th set of offenses, and overall have the 8th most difficult strength of schedule and an over-under win total of 9.5. And so, a few things for the Texans. First of all, my biggest question with the Texans is how bad will their decision to trade Laramie Tunsil look in hindsight? Like, they removed the only good player off of one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and they for 2 reasons: money and leadership reasons. And I don't know about leadership, but I know he can block. And I know they turned around and gave Christian Kirk $18 million a year.
Who stinks.
And so they did all of that. They traded Tunsil and spent his money on a bad wide receiver to get a second-round pick in next year's draft and a third-rounder in this year's, that was an egregious misuse of resources, I thought. Houston also ranked 29th in offensive efficiency last year. They relied mostly on explosive plays to bolster their offense, and those didn't come as frequently as they did 2 years ago. They also ranked 4th in sacks, but 20th in pressures defensively, so I would expect a decline in sack production. Now, the defense was really good last year, and they did add Rankins. They added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and so if the defense can play similarly to last year, and the offense can just stay healthy, because that was a huge issue, they should be better. But by the same token, I think the offensive line is worse. And so I don't know where to go with this one. This is another division that's not good, and maybe that pushes them over that win total. But out of the division, they have a pretty difficult schedule. So I hate the 9.5 line. I wouldn't touch it.
I'm going under, barely. I still have them winning the division at 9-8. But I'm going...
That's where I lean as well.
Yeah, it's hard to be optimistic. I mean, it's almost impossible to see them being better than last season, where we didn't even think they were any good, and they went 10-7. But the big X factor, they were terrible when Joe Mixon was either out or like ineffective last year. They were only pretty like if you look at most of the games they won, Joe Mixon had a good game. And if you look at the games they lost, they've usually got blown out, and Joe Mixon was either out or he got shut down and had 10 carries for 18 yards or whatever. Like, they were really reliant on Mixon's run game giving them any sort of juice in the passing game. And now Mixon's hurt right now. Coming into the year, we don't know when Mixon's going to play. They're giving very little information. Then if he's not healthy, you're relying on the corpse of Nick Chubb and the corpse of Dameon Pierce and Woody Marks, who they drafted on day 3. Like, not a lot to grasp onto in the running game whatsoever if Mixon's out for more than 3 or 4 weeks. And weirdly enough, like, how many assets have the Texans devoted to wide receiver in the last 4 years, let's call it? Xavier Hutchinson was a guy they took in 2023, and people were excited about it. Tank Dell has only been hurt, so it's a little hard to criticize him for Tank Dell. But you go out and you sign Christian Kirk, and then you draft receivers in the 2nd and 3rd round when you have holes all over this team, whether it's running back or O-line, or you want to find whatever the spot is on defense. I think they have a really good defense, but I don't. It's hard to. I think the most optimistic you can be is like, oh, they'll be what they were last year.
Yeah, which not really where you want to be as an organization with a quarterback on a rookie contract, but it's kind of where they find themselves. So
I guess you could say the new OC, who I actually don't even remember who the new OC is, but they fired. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Bobby Slowick. They fired Bobby Slowick, and they didn't hire Clint Kubiak, right? My brain is only saying that because Gary Kubiak coached the Texans.
Nick Caley. He came from the Rams, right? I think he was the Rams pass game coordinator.
Okay. Where did Clint Kubiak go? Seattle. Okay. There we go.
All right, let's roll on to the Indianapolis Colts, who went 8-9 last season. They lost Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, Raquan Davis, and most importantly, they lost Joe Flacco. They went out and added a couple of guys in the secondary, Shavarius Ward, Cam Bynum. They paid Daniel Jones $14 million.
Malpractice.
They drafted Tyler Warren and JTT. They will face the number 9 set of defenses, number 26 set of offenses, overall the 21st most difficult strength of schedule. Their over-under win total is at 7.5. Storylines for them. Anthony Richardson stinks, and Daniel Jones couldn't keep the starting job in New York. This isn't the worst quarterback room in the NFL because the Saints exist, but it's the second worst. This is a team, man, you talk about, to put an Eagles spin on things, you talk about teams that should go trade a second-round pick for Tanner McKee. The Colts would win the division if Tanner McKee's their starting quarterback. They've got a good roster, I feel like, except for quarterback, and quarterback is so bad. The Colts offensive line last season had 6 different combinations of starters play between 100 and 200 snaps, but they had 0 combinations play over 200 snaps together. It was an injury-riddled unit. It should be better this year. They did lose Ryan Kelly, which I think is a significant loss. I think he went to the Vikings. But if they're just healthy on the offensive line, you get an improvement there. They signed some big names in the secondary with Ward and Bynum, and then they brought in Lou Anarumo, who at one point in time we thought was a great DC. I expect this defense to take a leap, although pass rush is still a concern. But QB is just untenable in Indianapolis. I don't know how they keep doing this.
I'm just looking at the other quarterback contracts that were signed this offseason, and it feels like Indy was just in a holding pattern. They were like, you know what, we're not going to commit to anything. We're just going to give out like the best 1-year deal we can find because we have this lame duck head coach who we almost fired, and we have this lame duck GM who probably should have been fired 7 years ago. And Irsay, I think, was like, let's not risk everything, and let's see if Anthony Richardson can still be the guy. I think that was why they brought in Daniel Jones instead of maybe making a more aggressive move. And now it feels, after Jim Irsay passes away, feels like with the new ownership, it feels like they're even more in a holding pattern where like this year is just totally going to be a 1-year deal. Like I think Steichen, we've talked about this many times. I think Steichen's a really good coach. I think them winning whatever they've won. I think he went 9-8, and what did they go last year?
8-9.
8-9. So he's 500 over 2 years there in Indy with bottom 3 quarterback play in the NFL both years, maybe bottom 5 2 years ago. But it's been an abomination, and I don't think any of that has to do with Steichen as a play caller. So it's going to be a shame. I really don't see a path for Steichen to not get fired here. I have them at 7-10. And you can convince me this team wins 5 or 6 games. The only reason I don't have them bottoming out like that is out of respect for Steichen. So maybe he gets fired early in the year. But I feel bad for Steichen that Indy didn't decide to go pay Sam Darnold. 3 years. He got 3 years, $100 million. Neither of us were big, tell everybody to go pay for Sam Darnold guys. But if you're Indy and you're Chris Ballard and you're Shane Steichen, your job is on the line. How is Daniel Jones your response to that? You could go and take a risk on Sam Darnold, who at least we've seen be a really good quarterback last year in Minnesota. You could go take the risk on Justin Fields, 2 years, $40 million. Give him 2 years, $50 million. Maybe guarantee the second year more than the Jets were willing to, whatever the contract was there. And at least if you could talk Steichen into being, you did a really good job with Jalen Hurts. Maybe you could use Justin Fields' attributes and maybe kind of run the 2021 playbook when the Eagles went 9-8, when he kind of babied Jalen Hurts along a little bit. Maybe you go get Aaron Rodgers and you say, screw it, I'm turning it over to Aaron Rodgers. It's my last year anyway. Screw it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm gone anyway. Maybe you could convince yourself.
And then I can blame Aaron Rodgers.
Huh?
I said, and then I can blame Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Honestly, that is a good point. That's a great point. Or you could go, I know you're more out on this guy at this point than I was. Russell Wilson, if you look at the stats from last year, was fine. Russell Wilson's a lot better than Daniel Jones, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
So, and even if you look at Giants camp reports, people are like, oh my God, this is what it's like to have a real quarterback, and we have 3 of them. I do actually think every quarterback on the Giants roster is comfortably better than Daniel Jones, even if none of them are top 25 quarterbacks.
They should have got Jameis. Jameis should be a Colt.
Oh, 100%. 100% Jameis is better than Daniel Jones.
He would have thrown 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, and they would have been 9-8 and entertaining every week.
I mean, if we're going deeper than that, I'd prefer Brissett to Mariota showed a little bit last year when he popped in some games, more than Daniel Jones has shown to me. Josh Dobbs, I think, has had moments where he's shown more. After that, there's probably nothing else. But Daniel Jones getting $14 million baffles me. Who were they bidding against. Like Minnesota allegedly wanted to keep him, I remember, to be the backup to JJ because they brought him in last year, but like was Minnesota giving him $12 million? Like I don't know. A weird team.
Daniel Jones' agent's pretty good, is what I'm getting.
He is, and they're a little bit of like a Green Bay wide receiver situation where it's a lot of dudes, and maybe they'd be better if they had good quarterback play. Maybe Josh Downs is actually just really good, and we don't know it because he's played with terrible quarterbacks. But I not a lot to be excited about with Indy. Also, one of the worst secondaries I think in football. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, at least Lou Anarumo is used to working with terrible defenses.
Yeah. So, not a lot of talent on the defense, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who did bottom out last season. They go 4-13. They move on from Doug Peterson. They lose Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Brandon Sheriff, and Andre Sisco. They added Patrick McCarry, De'Ami Brown, Jordan Lewis, Robert Hainsey, and then in the draft, they make the trade up for Travis Hunter. They grab Wyatt Milam on day 2. They will face the number 11 set of defenses, number 29 set of offenses. Overall, they have the 27th most difficult strength of schedule. Their over-under win total is at 7.5. And this is the question we have to ask at this point, Mark. Is Trevor Lawrence just a mid-quarterback? He was called generational. He signed a $275 million contract, and he hasn't come remotely close to earning that title or that contract. He has a 36% winning percentage as a career. And sure, it's QB wins, which isn't the best metric. And sure, he had Urban Meyer for his rookie season, and that sucked. But we can just look at the last 2 seasons, and his win percentage was 38% in the last 2 years. And in the last 2 years, when throwing under 2.5 seconds while not being pressured, so clean pocket, quick release, supposed to be what he's good at, he ranks 25th in EPA and 28th in success rate out of 36 qualifying quarterbacks. That's terrible. He is sandwiched between Gardner Minshew and Josh Dobbs in success rate when throwing from a clean pocket with a quick release. I mean, and he appears on multiple quarterback ranking lists ahead of Jalen Hurts and multiple other guys he just shouldn't. Now he gets Liam Cohen, and I think Liam Cohen is awesome. And he has Brian Thomas Jr., and I think Brian Thomas Jr. is awesome. And he gets Travis Hunter. And so there's a lot of things pointing in his favor to get him back on track. But it's really concerning that a guy that is supposed to be your franchise guy that's generational couldn't make do with a Super Bowl winning head coach and a really good wide receiver. Like, it's just not great. And so it's make or break time for Trevor Lawrence. He really needs to bounce back this year. And he needs to stay healthy. He's been banged up the last 2 years. But it's not just the offense. The Jags defense was bottom 5 in both pass D and run D last year. And so they get Travis Hunter, but he's going to play both sides. I don't know what that's going to look like. The Jordan Lewis edition is nice, but it's probably not enough. I will say they went 3-10 in one-score games last year, and so pretty unlucky there. You would maybe expect that to move back in the right direction, but it's go time for Trevor Lawrence.
So we talk about on Green Bay. When I talk about Jordan Love, I always talk about the second half of his first year and the second half of last year, and how it's hard for me to ignore just how elite he is in stretches, and usually half-season stretches now for Love, 2 years in a row. It's a little easier to reference that when it's 2023 and then 2024. With Trevor Lawrence, what you're grasping onto, if you have hope in Trevor Lawrence, you're grasping onto, I'm trying to get the exact stretch, November 2022 up to October 29, 2023. It's a 17-game stretch from halfway through 2022 to halfway through 2023, where they went on a great stretch the end of 2022 and started 2023 really hot. In those 17 games, the Jags went 13-4. Trevor Lawrence had a 69% completion percentage, threw for 4,208 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, ran for 500 yards, and for 2 rushing touchdowns in that 17 games. if you look at pretty much everything outside of those 17 games in Trevor Lawrence's career, he's been nothing but a complete failure. Other than that 17 games, there's no reason for hope. But in those 17 games, he was probably a top 5 quarterback over that kind of year-long stretch, because it is 17 games. It's a full season, just over 2 seasons. Over that second half into the first half of that year, he was a top 5 quarterback there. And it's maybe I should give up that that's not there anymore. And maybe he got Carson Wentz by Doug Peterson and reverse developed in the same way that Carson Wentz did. But it's hard for me to totally give up too. And I think I referenced this earlier, but I'm in this Discord where it's actually a basketball Discord, but there's a separate chat for football, and those guys are all these guys are way in on the Jags. There's a lot of sexy Jags love, kind of like they're the sexy team. Nobody wants to pick the Texans. Nobody wants to pick Richardson and Daniel Jones to win the division. The Titans are bad, so I feel like the sexy option is let's pick the Jags, and they're going to turn it around. And I feel like normally I'd be right there. Like, I've been predicting the Jags to be good for 3 straight years or whatever it's been. And I can't do it unless I fully believe. They hurt me too bad in 2023 with that second half collapse when I thought that they were a legit Super Bowl contender that year. And they really have fallen apart since then. And for me to go all in, I would have to have fully believed in their offseason path. I like the Liam Cohen hire. I've talked pretty extensively how skeptical I am on the Travis Hunter situation. What is he going to be? How much is he going to play on both sides? He played 11 offensive snaps and 0 defensive snaps in the first preseason game. I don't know if that's a trend, or next week in the preseason they're going to play him on defense. It seems counterproductive if you're going to play him on both sides in the regular season to play him on one side in a preseason game. But I don't know how you handle him, because I don't think anybody knows how to handle it in 2025 in the NFL with a guy on both sides. How impactful is he going to be on both sides if he's playing both? Is he worth the pick and what you invested in him if he's only playing one side? That was always kind of my argument, is I had him 6th instead of 2nd, and not only did you draft him 2nd, you gave up all these assets to draft him 2nd while you have all these problems in the trenches on the offensive and defensive line. Is there, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter out wide is fun. If Travis Hunter plays both ways and he's a good corner, that's fun. I think they've got a lot of holes still. I want to be in. I want to be in on the Trevor Lawrence turnaround. I want to be in on Liam Cohen, Duval. But I'm skeptical in the trenches, and I'm skeptical about how good Travis Hunter is going to be in terms of right away.
Yeah, last year on our divisional preview, I said that it's time. Like, Trevor Lawrence has shown flashes. It's time to grow up and stop putting the ball in harm's way so much. Stop making so many boneheaded plays that you shouldn't be making, having been in the league this long. Well, he responded with the highest turnover-worthy play percentage of his career at 3.9%, which is just slightly below Will Levis and Jameis Winston. Actually, it's quite a bit below Jameis. Jameis is in a whole other stratosphere, but he's top 5 each of the last 2 years in turnover-worthy play rate, and the juice hasn't been worth the squeeze so far. And so I'd love to see him turn it around, and hopefully Liam Cohen can get the best out of him, and I guess we'll see. So, got a comment here from Krabby. Said, didn't expect see you guys on a Sunday morning in August. Yeah, I had some schedule things. It was hard for us to get a schedule worked out this week, so I messaged Mark frantically and was like, hey, can we do Sunday afternoon? And he graciously made that work. So, yeah, we'll be back in a rhythm maybe once season starts. It's just been a little crazy right now.
Actually, it worked out well for me, too. What was the win total there for Jacksonville, by the way?
7.5.
I'll go over, but it's very slight. I have them at 8 and 9.
I'm with you 100% on that. So, okay, let's go to our final team, the Tennessee Titans, who were 3-14 last year. They lose Harold Landry and Kenneth Murray. They bring in Dan Moore, Kevin Zeitler, Draymond Jones, Cody Barton, Tyler Lockett. They go draft Cam Ward 1 overall. They will face the number 11 overall set of defenses, the 31st set of offenses, overall the 25th most difficult strength of schedule. Their over-under win total is at 5.5. And the Titans' skill positions are just really bad. Now, there should be some stability on the offensive line thanks to the Dan Moore, Kevin Zeitler signings. Moore was dramatically overpaid, but who cares? You've got a rookie on a rookie contract for 4 years. Cam Ward is a huge upgrade over Will Levis, but there just isn't enough to work with. People throw out Jaden Daniels things, but Jaden Daniels had so much more to work with last year than what Cam Ward has to work with. And that's just on the offensive side. You flip to the defensive side. The defense finished 29th in pressure rate last year, and they lost Harold Landry. They signed Dramont Jones and Lorenzo Carter, but neither of those guys moves the needle that much. And so they need Oladejo, the guy they drafted in the second round, to make an immediate impact as a rookie, just to hope that your defense can have a little bit of a pass rush. And I will say they have an easy schedule. They get the Jags twice. They get the Browns. They get the Patriots. All of those were bottom 5 teams last year. And so I hesitate to just slap the number 1 overall pick label on them because the road to the number 1 overall pick is convoluted. And I do think that Cam Ward's going to raise that floor a little bit. So this is another line I don't want to touch because I think I've probably got them about a 6-ish win team, and they're at 5.5. But if you push me on it, I guess I'd take the over just due to their schedule.
I'll go with a slight under. And I've kind of hated everything about what they've done as a roster the last 2 years now. Like, I think we debated a little bit last year, and I think he was average. I think he was fine. I don't think he was special. But I thought picking J.C. Latham at 7 was like a waste of the 7th pick. Like, I thought that was more like a 15th to 20th type pick guy, and there was other O-linemen I would have taken over him in other positions that I think they could have used. And you went out and you paid Dan Moore and Zeitler all that money. I in some ways it's fine. You needed to get O-linemen, but like I don't know if that would have been the path I would have taken. And then you went out and you took Cam Ward first. If I was them, you're not close to competing. I probably would have traded down, to be honest. I know that's a hard thing to say. You have the first pick. You think there's a quarterback prospect there. I didn't think there was a quarterback prospect there worth taking 1. Clearly, other people disagree with me. People wanted to trade up to 1.
Definitely not knowing what Travis Hunter commanded in that trade up.
Even if you're just saying trade down for Hunter and give up what they got for Hunter, that's true. But we know now that the Giants really wanted to trade up for Ward, and there were other teams that wanted to trade up for Ward. So they should have done that, in my opinion. They didn't. They go out in the second round. They take Oladejo, who I did not have in my top 100. And then they go out in the third round. They took Kevin Winston Jr., who a lot of people thought, like, oh my God, he fell to 96. I did not have him in my top 100. And so it's just been 2 straight years of them drafting way, way, way off of my board. And Cam Ward I had outside of the top 30 on my big board this year. They took him 1. Obviously, I understand positional value, but I look at this roster, and outside of like the interior defensive line with Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, like, not a lot to be excited about. I think you really have to love Cam Ward to think this team's winning more than 6 games, and I don't. So I'm going 4.
Yeah. This is kind of a depressing set of divisions. The AFC, NFC South. I feel like we've just been saying all episode, it's like, man, these teams just aren't very good. These divisions aren't very good.
I was so negative all show. I should have spiced up the positivity on Tampa a little bit more had I known the rest of the 7 were going to be so negative. But I did say I think Tampa has just as good of a roster as anybody in the NFC outside of Philadelphia. So yeah. I am complimentary of them. I think they're every bit. I think they just, even if I have the doubts on Bowles and we don't know if we probably think he can't win a Super Bowl with this roster or with the quarterback or with the play caller. I think if we're just like saying who can you close your eyes and see winning the Super Bowl, if you're not including them, it's a small list of teams.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, well, that's going to about do it for our AFC NFC South episode. If you're a fan of one of those teams, except the Bucks, I guess. Sorry. Hopefully your teams prove us wrong. But next week we will be previewing the AFC NFC West, which will conclude our preview series. And then it's going to be time to talk about some real football, which is going to be a lot of fun. But Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with the people?
Yeah, AFC and NFC West is a lot more positive, a lot more.
Yeah.
We'll see. I guess a lot more. I think there's more positivity to be talked about in the AFC and NFC West. But the two big ifs on that are the two LA teams. Obviously, we don't know what's going on with Stafford. Hopefully, by next week, we have a little bit more clarity on whatever's happening with Stafford. And then, more importantly, there's no clarity needed. Me and Shane were talking about it, and I think I forget what episode of this show I gave an impassioned speech for the Chargers and how they're going to win the AFC. Thankfully, I didn't bet those numbers on them to win the AFC just yet, but I thought that they were the one team outside of the big three in Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City that could break in and compete to go to the Super Bowl and compete to win the AFC or go to the AFC Championship, whatever you want to say. And now that Rashawn Slater is out, who I think is maybe the best offensive tackle in football outside of Lane Johnson, maybe outside of Lane and Panay, so maybe he's third. But he's one of the best offensive tackles in football. One of the main reasons I was in on the Chargers was the fact that you had Joe Alt on one side and Rashawn Slater on the other side, and having two potentially top five-ish offensive tackles with a good quarterback, a great head coach, and a young defense with a running back who I'm really high on, who they just drafted, and a receiver who they just drafted who I'm really high on, and Ladd maybe taking a step into year two. Like, I thought there was enough to buy into for me to think, you know what, if things go right, this team could be right with those elite teams in the AFC. Now, you take away their best player, which I think Rashawn Slater is their best player, even above a Herbert or whoever you want to say. I can't see that team competing to win the AFC. It's kind of similar to Detroit last year when I had to inform Lions fans who were mad at me for telling them that the year for them was not going to be the year where Aiden Hutchinson was out for the season. It's just not how it works. You don't generally win the Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl without your best player. So I feel the same way about the Chargers. That knocks them out of contendership for me. And if you look at the odds on DraftKings for teams to win the AFC, you have the Bills, Ravens, and Chiefs clumped together at, I don't know the exact numbers there, but they're all under plus 400, plus 500. And then you don't have another team until the Bengals at 11-1. Me and Shane have both talked about how skeptical we are of the Bengals, and you can go on from there. But I think when I close my eyes and say, who can I see winning the AFC, there are three teams. There's not a single team outside of the elite quarterbacks of Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes that I could see breaking into that top three.
Yeah, and despite that, you should still tune in next week and hear us preview the AFC West.
Oh, yeah. I think there's three playoff teams in the AFC West. So
yeah,
there's still a lot of interesting conversations to be had. But, yeah, I mean, that's an AFC-wide problem. I don't know who that fourth team is.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. So, well, there you have it, folks. That is going to do it. Thank you for joining us for episode number 199 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcasts. The Eagles Pinpole Network is about to start popping off. We're going to have a lot of shows coming your way. I think we've got 9 full-length shows on schedule weekly, as well as Phil's daily check-down episodes, and that'll all be up and running by the time the season starts. So we're still kind of kicking up into that. The first Armchair Scouts of the season is tomorrow night. Kelly Greenhour is about to kick back to twice a week, and so lots of stuff coming your way. Be sure you subscribe on podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss anything. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at ShaneHalfNFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys. He is at Mark Henry Jr. NFL, and we will catch you guys next time.